Victoria Chase slammed her palm on the conference table so hard the water glasses trembled. 300 investors waited in the auditorium. The server cooling system was dead, and 15 MIT engineers stood paralyzed, offering nothing but excuses. Then she spotted him, the janitor, standing in the corner with his mop bucket, watching everything with calm, knowing eyes. "You," she pointed at him like he was furniture. "You think you're smarter than my entire engineering team? Fine. Fix it in 90 minutes and I'll kiss you right in front of everyone. Fail, and you'll never work in this city again." The janitor set down his mop, looked her dead in the eyes. "I don't need your kiss, Miss Chase. My daughter has a piano recital tonight. I'll fix your system because broken things deserve to be fixed. That's the only deal I need." What Victoria didn't know was that this maintenance man had once commanded 200 engineers on a Navy aircraft carrier. What she didn't know was that he'd given up a six-figure military career to raise his daughter alone. What she didn't know was that by the end of this day, he wouldn't just fix her machine. He'd fix her. Comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The emergency board meeting at Meridian Technologies was supposed to be routine. Final systems check. Last-minute coordination. A simple formality before the most important product launch in the company's history. Instead, chaos erupted when the main server cooling system failed, threatening to destroy $12 million in equipment and 3 years of development in a matter of minutes. Victoria Chase stood at the head of the mahogany conference table, her knuckles white against its polished surface. At 35 years old, she commanded this room with the same cold precision that had earned her the nickname whispered in every corner of Silicon Valley. The surgeon. Not because she healed anything, because she cut employees, departments, partnerships. Anything that showed weakness got removed with clinical efficiency. "Someone explained to me," she said, her voice cutting through the panic like a scalpel, "how a cooling system with triple redundancy fails 2 hours before the most important demonstration in this company's history." Marcus Webb, Chief Technology Officer, loosened his tie for the third time in 5 minutes. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the emergency air conditioning struggling to compensate for the failed system. "Victoria, these things happen. The system is only 18 months old. Swedish engineering. Top of the line. There's no logical explanation for—" "I don't want explanations, Marcus. I want solutions." She turned to the cluster of senior engineers huddled around diagnostic tablets. 15 of them. Combined degrees from MIT, Stanford, Caltech, Carnegie Mellon. Combined salaries north of $4 million annually. "Well, what's the timeline?" Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, head of systems engineering, stepped forward reluctantly. She'd been with the company 7 years. She knew how Victoria handled bad news. "Best case scenario, we're looking at 8 hours for full diagnostics, another 4 for repairs, maybe 5. 12 hours. Minimum. The cascade failure affected multiple subsystems. We're essentially looking at a complete rebuild of—" "The investors leave in 2 hours, Patricia. The Department of Defense delegation leaves in 2 hours. Senator Morrison leaves in 2 hours. Are you telling me that 12 hours is the best this company's brightest minds can offer?" Silence. The kind of silence that fills a room when everyone knows they're about to witness an execution. Victoria's phone buzzed. Her father. She ignored it. Richard Chase had called 4 times in the past hour. He'd been against this launch from the beginning. Too risky, he'd said. Too much riding on unproven technology. Now, he was probably sitting in his Malibu estate, waiting to say, "I told you so." She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. "Options," Victoria demanded. "I want options. Someone in this room is going to fix this, or someone in this room is going to explain to 300 investors why Meridian Technologies just lost $2 billion in projected contracts." That's when she noticed him. Standing in the corner by the service entrance. Blue coveralls. Work boots. A mop bucket beside him that he'd apparently abandoned when the crisis began. The maintenance man. He was watching the diagnostic screens over the engineer's shoulders with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not panic like the executives. Not confusion like the engineers. Something else. Recognition. You. Victoria pointed at him. What are you staring at? Every head in the room turned. Daniel Reeves had been invisible until that moment. Maintenance workers usually were. They existed in the background of corporate life, cleaning spills and fixing squeaky hinges, while the important people made important decisions. Daniel was 38 years old, though the gray at his temples and the lines around his eyes suggested more. His hands were calloused, his shoulders broad from actual physical labor rather than expensive gym memberships. He carried himself with a quiet steadiness that seemed almost military, because it was. The exhaust pattern, he said. His voice was calm, measured, the voice of a man who'd spoken in crisis situations before. On the external venting, it's not consistent with an electrical failure. Marcus laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was high and nervous, the laugh of a man desperate to redirect attention away from his own failure. I'm sorry, did the janitor just offer a diagnosis? That's adorable. Victoria, can we please focus on... What kind of failure? Victoria interrupted. She didn't know why she asked. Curiosity, maybe. Or desperation. Or something in the maintenance man's eyes that suggested he knew exactly what he was looking at. Daniel stepped forward. The engineers parted automatically, not out of respect, but surprise. Maintenance workers didn't approach the conference table. They didn't participate in crisis meetings. They didn't exist in the same professional universe as people with doctoral degrees. Pressure relief valve, Daniel said. The primary valve failed, created a cascade shutdown through the secondary cooling loops. Everything downstream looks electrical, but the root cause is mechanical. I've seen this exact failure pattern before. Dr. Okonkwo crossed her arms. And where exactly would a maintenance worker have encountered a Swedish-engineered Killstrom cooling system? USS Ronald Reagan, aircraft carrier. We used the same manufacturer for the reactor cooling backup systems. Lost power during a Pacific crossing in 2015. Valve failure triggered a cascade that knocked out 3 redundant systems simultaneously. You worked on a nuclear aircraft carrier. I commanded the engineering department on a nuclear aircraft carrier. The room went quiet again. Different kind of quiet this time. Victoria studied him with new interest. She'd inherited her father's ability to read people, to see past the surface presentation to the calculation underneath. This man wasn't calculating anything. He wasn't posturing or positioning. He simply knew. How long? She asked. 90 minutes. Maybe less if the parts I need are in the building. Marcus stepped between them, his face flushed with a combination of embarrassment and territorial instinct. Victoria, this is absurd. We can't let a janitor touch critical systems based on some story about aircraft carriers. For all we know, he mopped floors on that ship. Lieutenant Commander, Daniel said. Naval Engineering Corps. 15 years active duty. But I'm sure your LinkedIn profile is more impressive. Victoria almost smiled. Almost. What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Reeves, Daniel Reeves? And I'm proposing that I fix your cooling system while your engineering team watches and learns something. The arrogance, Marcus sputtered. Victoria, I must insist. You've insisted on 8 to 12 hours, Marcus. Mr. Reeves is offering 90 minutes. Victoria walked around the conference table until she stood directly in front of Daniel. Close enough to smell industrial soap and something else. Coffee, maybe. Honest work. She had to look up to meet his eyes. She was 5'8" in heels. He was at least 6'2", but she'd faced down senators and billionaires without flinching. A maintenance worker wouldn't intimidate her. Let me make this interesting, she said. The words came out before she fully considered them. A power move, pure and simple. The kind of public challenge that reminded everyone in the room who controlled the narrative. You claim you can fix what 15 engineers and a CTO cannot. Fine. 90 minutes. If you succeed, I'll kiss you right here in front of everyone." Gasps. Murmurs. Someone actually dropped a tablet. Victoria smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "But when you fail, and you will fail, you're terminated. No severance, no reference, no unemployment claim. You'll walk out of this building with nothing, and I'll make sure every employer in the Bay Area knows that Daniel Reeves doesn't know his limitations." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Everyone waited for the maintenance man to back down, to apologize, to retreat to his mop bucket and let the real professionals handle the crisis. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Victoria felt something shift in the room, something in the way he held her gaze. Not defiance exactly. Not fear, certainly. Recognition. He was looking at her the way she looked at financial statements, reading the data beneath the presentation. "I don't care about your kiss, Miss Chase." The words landed like a slap. Victoria's smile froze. "My daughter has a piano recital tonight at her school. First public performance. She's been practicing for 3 months. Chopsticks mostly, but she finally learned the opening of Fur-Elise, and she wants me in the front row." He paused. Let the silence work. "I'll fix your cooling system because it's broken, and I know how to fix it. Because 300 people are depending on that demonstration. Because somewhere in that auditorium there's probably someone whose life might actually be saved by the technology you're launching." He turned toward the door. "That's the only deal I need." Victoria watched him walk out. No permission requested, no deference shown. Just a man with a job to do, leaving to do it. "Should I call security?" Marcus asked. "We can't just let him try." Marcus's jaw dropped. "Victoria, the liability alone is less than the $2 billion we lose if this launch fails." She pulled out her phone, finally answering her father's call. "Set up camera feeds from the mechanical room. I want eyes on everything he does." "Victoria, sweetheart." Richard Chase's voice dripped with concern that Victoria knew was actually satisfaction. "I've been hearing troubling things about the launch. Technical difficulties. Nothing we can't handle, father." Of course. Though I did warn you that rushing this timeline was... I have to go." She ended the call before he could finish. Her father had been waiting 35 years for her to fail. He'd have to keep waiting. The mechanical room was a cathedral of technology. Banks of servers humming with the collective knowledge of Meridian's artificial intelligence project. Cooling pipes running like arteries through the steel and concrete body of the building. Warning lights flashing red in a rhythm that felt almost like a failing heartbeat. Daniel stood at the center of it all, tool belt strapped around his waist, studying the system with the same focus he'd once used to assess damage control on a warship. The engineers gathered at the observation window tablets, ready to document whatever disaster was about to unfold. Marcus was already composing the incident report in his head. Career ending for the janitor. Useful ammunition for restructuring the maintenance department. Dr. Okonkwo watched with a different kind of attention. Despite herself, despite everything her education told her about expertise and credentials, she found herself curious. "He's bypassing the main control interface," she murmured. "That's actually quite clever." "He's going to electrocute himself," Marcus predicted. "No. Look, he's isolating each subsystem before he touches it, creating a diagnostic pathway that doesn't exist in the standard manual." Daniel worked with an economy of motion that spoke of thousands of hours of practice. No wasted energy, no hesitation. His hands moved from tool to circuit to pipe, with a rhythm that was almost musical. Sweat began soaking through his coveralls. The mechanical room was approaching 90 degrees as the failed cooling system struggled against thermal load. Most of the engineers had retreated from the observation window, unable to tolerate even the residual heat. Daniel didn't seem to notice. In his mind, he wasn't in a Silicon Valley server room. He was back in the engine compartment of the Reagan Pacific Ocean, 2015. 3 a.m. Reactor cooling backup failing. 6,000 sailors depending on him to solve a problem that shouldn't have been possible. He'd solved it then. He'd solve it now. But not for Victoria Chase. Not for Meridian Technologies. Not for the investors or the senators or the Department of Defense. For Mia. His daughter was 8 years old. She had her mother's eyes, the mother who'd walked out when Mia was barely old enough to remember her face. Lauren had left a note shorter than most grocery lists. I can't do this anymore. 3 weeks after Mia's first birthday. Daniel had made a choice that day. The Navy or his daughter. The career he'd built over 15 years or the tiny person who needed him more than any ship ever would. He'd chosen Mia. The six-figure salary disappeared. The respect that came with rank evaporated. He went from commanding 200 engineers to taking orders from supervisors half his age who couldn't tell a capacitor from a resistor. But every night he got to read Mia a bedtime story. Every morning he got to make her breakfast. Every scraped knee, every bad dream, every small triumph he was there. Tonight was supposed to be the biggest triumph yet. Her first piano recital. 3 months of practice. Hours of patient repetition. Chopsticks first, then scales. Then finally the opening measures of Für Elise. She'd made him promise to sit in the front row. Where I can see you, Daddy, so I'm not scared. He'd promised. Daniel Reeves did not break promises. At 1:47 p.m. he isolated the failed pressure relief valve. Just as he'd suspected the mechanism had corroded from the inside out, a manufacturing defect that wouldn't show up in any diagnostic software because the software was looking for electrical failures, not mechanical ones. He'd seen this exact failure before. Different continent. Different stakes. Same Swedish manufacturer cutting corners on valve housings to save $12 per unit. The repair required bypassing 3 safety interlocks and creating a temporary cooling loop using components that existed in no manual. The kind of improvisation that got you court-martialed in peacetime and decorated in crisis. At 2:03 p.m., Marcus checked his watch and smiled. 53 minutes had passed. The maintenance man had 47 left. No way he'd... The lights changed. Red warnings shifted to amber, then green. One by one, like dominoes falling in reverse, the system came back online. That's impossible, Dr. Okonkwo whispered. The cooling system hummed back to life, not the smooth purr of normal operation, more like the determined growl of a machine forced back from the dead by sheer will, but functional. Stable. Ready. At 2:09 p.m., 63 minutes after he'd started, Daniel Reeves stepped out of the mechanical room. His coveralls were soaked with sweat and stained with hydraulic fluid. His hands were black with grime. He looked exhausted, depleted like a soldier after a battle that cost him something even in victory. But he didn't look up at the observation window where Victoria Chase stood frozen. He didn't look for her approval, or her promised kiss, or any acknowledgement at all. He simply pulled out his phone, checked the time, and started walking toward the employee locker room. 3:47 p.m. If he hurried, he could shower change and still make it to Mia's school by 6 hours. Victoria found him in the parking garage. He'd changed into jeans and a flannel shirt that had seen better days. His pickup truck, a Ford F-150 that looked old enough to vote, was loaded with tools and what appeared to be robot parts in the truck bed. "You left," she said, her heels clicking against concrete as she approached. "The launch isn't over. The demonstration starts in 20 minutes. Daniel tossed a toolbox into the truck bed. "My part's done. System's stable. Your engineers can handle the rest." "The engineers couldn't handle the beginning. Why would I trust them with the rest?" "That's a management problem, Miss Chase, not my department." The dismissal stung more than it should have. Victoria Chase was not dismissed. She dismissed others. That was the natural order of things. "About what I said earlier." She started the words awkward in her mouth. "The offer I made." Now he looked at her. Really looked. And she saw something in his eyes that she didn't expect. Not desire, not expectation. Not the calculating hunger she'd seen in every man who'd ever gotten close to her. Weariness. and beneath it a kind of quiet amusement. "You mean the kiss?" He actually smiled. Just barely. "That wasn't for me, Miss Chase. That was for them, your engineers, your executives. You wanted to remind everyone that even their failure was worth more than my success. That even when the janitor saves the day, the CEO still controls the story." The accuracy of his assessment left her momentarily speechless. "I've met people like you before," Daniel continued, leaning against his truck. "In the Navy, in the corporate world. People who think everyone else exists just to make them look important. You probably don't even see it anymore. It's just how you operate. That's not. The cooling system is fixed. The launch will be fine. You'll get your $2 billion in contracts, and by next week, you won't even remember my name." He opened the driver's door. "Have a nice evening, Miss Chase." Something pried curiosity, or perhaps the unfamiliar sting of being seen so clearly, made her grab his arm. The muscle beneath the flannel was solid, real, earned through labor rather than personal trainers. "Wait." He looked at her hand on his arm, then at her face. The contrast between them was sharp as a photograph. Manicured nails against work-worn fabric. Diamond earrings catching the fluorescent light. Two people from worlds that weren't supposed to touch. "I was wrong," Victoria said. The words felt foreign in her mouth. She couldn't remember the last time she'd said them. "About you. About what I offered. It was cruel. You deserved better." Daniel studied her for a long moment. She felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with vulnerability and everything to do with being actually seen for perhaps the first time in years. "Apology accepted," he said finally. "Now, if you'll excuse me, my daughter's waiting." He got into the truck. The engine coughed to life with a sound that suggested it, too, was being held together by determination and improvised repairs. "Mr. Reeves." He paused, hand on the gear shift. "What's her name?" "Your daughter." The question surprised them both. Victoria wasn't sure why she'd asked. "Mia." Something softened in his voice. Just slightly. Just enough to notice. "She's 8, obsessed with robots and piano. Terrible at both, but she doesn't know that yet. And I'm not going to be the one to tell her." He pulled out of the parking space. Victoria stood alone in the garage, watching his taillights disappear around the corner. The concrete around her was stained with oil spots and scattered with the debris of corporate life. She could hear the distant hum of the building's newly restored cooling system. Somewhere above her, 300 investors were gathering for a demonstration that would secure Meridian's future. Somewhere above her, the career she'd built for 15 years was about to reach its apex. And she was standing in a parking garage thinking about a maintenance man's daughter and the way he'd said her name. Mia. Like a prayer. Like a promise. Like the only thing in the world that actually mattered. Victoria pulled out her phone. Her father had called again. Marcus was texting urgent updates about the demonstration. The Department of Defense liaison needed to speak with her before the presentation. She ignored all of it. Instead, she pulled up a different screen. Employee records. Security clearance files. Daniel Robert Reeves, age 38. Contract maintenance worker employed 4 months. Previous occupation classified. She scrolled down. Military service record, Lieutenant Commander United States Navy. Engineering Corps, USS Ronald Reagan. USS Carl Vinson. Afghanistan deployment, 2012-2014. Commendations including Bronze Star Navy Achievement Medal. Joint Service Commendation. Resigned commission, 2019. Reason listed family obligations. Family obligations. 2 words that contained an entire life restructured. A career abandoned. A sacrifice made. Victoria thought about her father. Richard Chase had never sacrificed anything for family. He'd sacrificed family for everything else. She thought about her mother. Sarah Elizabeth Chase Ney Thornton. dead at 42. Pills in a bathtub. A note that said, "Love is weakness." She thought about the maintenance man driving through Bay Area traffic to watch his daughter play Fur-Elise. Badly. But he'd be there. Front row. Where she could see him. So she wouldn't be scared. Victoria closed the employee file, straightened her blazer, checked her reflection in a car window. Perfect. Professional. Untouchable. The surgeon. She walked back toward the elevator that would take her to the auditorium. To the investors. To the future she'd designed with the same cold precision she'd applied to everything else in her life. But something had shifted. Something she couldn't name yet. Something that felt almost like a crack in a wall she'd spent 35 years building. The demonstration was flawless. Victoria presented to 300 investors, senators, and defense officials with her usual precision. The AI diagnostic system performed exactly as designed. The contracts were signed before midnight. $2.3 billion secured. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, she found herself distracted. Her eyes kept drifting to the service entrances looking for someone who'd left hours ago. At 9:47 p.m., after the last handshake and the final champagne toast, she retreated to her office. The Bay Area glittered beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. 47 floors of corporate achievement beneath her. She pulled up the security footage from the mechanical room. There he was, Daniel Reeves, working with hands that knew their purpose, solving a problem that should have been unsolvable because he'd seen it before, learned from it, carried that knowledge into a new situation. No ego, no performance, just competence applied with quiet confidence. She watched him finish the repair, watched him check his phone, watched him walk away without looking back. Then she did something she'd never done before. She pulled up the external security cameras. Parking garage. Tracked his truck leaving the building, switched to street cameras. Followed him east, toward the bridge, toward Oakland. She lost him in traffic somewhere around Emeryville, but she kept thinking about where he was going. A piano recital. A little girl playing Fur-Elise. Badly. Victoria's phone buzzed. Her father. "Congratulations, sweetheart. I heard the launch was a success." "Thank you, Father. Though I also heard there was some unpleasantness, some maintenance worker who overstepped his bounds." Of course he'd heard. Richard Chase heard everything. "It was handled." "I'm sure it was. But Victoria..." His voice took on the tone she recognized from childhood. The tone that preceded lessons about weakness and power and the importance of maintaining proper distance from people who didn't matter. "Be careful. People like that workers' servants, the help they see opportunity in vulnerability. They mistake kindness for invitation. I've seen it destroy better people than good night, Father." She ended the call. Then she sat in her corner office 47 floors above the city, surrounded by the evidence of her success, and wondered why she felt so completely alone. Across the bay in a school auditorium that smelled like floor wax and anxiety, Daniel Reeves sat in the front row. Mia was third in the program. When she walked onto the stage, she looked impossibly small. 8 years old, missing her 2 front teeth, wearing a dress that Daniel had ironed 3 times because he still couldn't quite figure out the settings on the machine. She spotted him immediately. Her face transformed. "Daddy?" She waved. The entire auditorium heard her. Parents chuckled. Teachers smiled. Daniel waved back. "You've got this, baby girl." She sat at the piano, took a breath, placed her fingers on the keys. The first note was wrong. The second note was worse. By the third measure, Mia had played something that bore only coincidental resemblance to Beethoven. Her face started to crumble. She looked at Daniel with eyes filling with tears. He smiled at her, nodded, mouthed, "Keep going." She kept going. It wasn't good. It wasn't even close to good. But she finished. Every note, every measure, all the way to the end. When she struck the final chord slightly off key, slightly too loud, Daniel was on his feet, clapping like she'd just performed at Carnegie Hall. Later over ice cream, Mia asked, "Was I good, Daddy?" Daniel looked at his daughter, this fierce, determined, motherless girl who'd inherited nothing from Lauren except her eyes, who practiced piano for 3 months to play 90 seconds of music, who'd named her robot project Helper because, as she'd explained with 8-year-old seriousness, robots should help people, Daddy, not hurt them. "You were perfect," he said. "I messed up a lot. Everybody messes up. The important thing is you didn't quit. You kept going." Mia considered this with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice weighing constitutional matters. "Is that why you always fix broken things? Because it's like not quitting?" Daniel felt something catch in his throat. "Yeah, baby. That's exactly why." She nodded, satisfied with the answer, and returned to her ice cream. Outside the Bay Area, night was cold and clear. Somewhere across the water, the lights of San Francisco glittered like promises that wouldn't be kept. Somewhere in those lights, Victoria Chase was probably celebrating a $2 billion triumph. Daniel didn't think about her. He thought about the broken cooling system now running, the promise he'd kept to be here, the chocolate ice cream on Mia's chin. Some things were worth more than any amount of money. Some things were worth everything. 3 days passed before Victoria saw him again. She'd told herself she wasn't looking. Told herself that the maintenance man who'd saved her $2 billion launch was just another employee in a building full of employees. Told herself that the strange feeling in her chest when she thought about him was simply professional curiosity. She was lying. Monday morning, she found herself taking the stairs instead of the executive elevator. The stairs that passed the maintenance level. The stairs she'd never used once in 5 years of running this company. He wasn't there. Tuesday, she scheduled a facilities review that required walking through every floor of the building. Standard oversight, she told her assistant. Nothing unusual. He wasn't there either. Wednesday, she was returning from a board meeting when she spotted him in the lobby. He was on his knees beside an elevator panel, tools spread around him in organized rows, explaining something to a younger maintenance worker who was taking notes like a medical student observing surgery. Victoria stopped walking. She stood near the reception desk, pretending to check her phone, watching him work. His hands moved with the same precise efficiency she'd seen in the mechanical room. Patient, methodical, teaching rather than just fixing. The younger worker asked a question. Daniel answered without condescension, demonstrating a technique, then guiding the younger man's hands through the motion. "Try it yourself now," Daniel said. "You'll remember it better if your hands learn it, not just your brain." Victoria felt something twist in her chest. When was the last time anyone at Meridian had taught anything with that kind of patience? In her world, knowledge was hoarded, not shared. Information was power. Teaching someone made them competition. Daniel looked up. Their eyes met across 30 feet of marble and corporate indifference. He nodded, just once, the way one professional acknowledges another. Then he returned to his work. The dismissal burned more than it should have. Victoria walked to the elevator, punched the button for 47, and spent the ride staring at her reflection in polished steel. Perfect makeup, perfect hair, perfect armor. Inside, something was cracking. She started noticing things after that. Details about Daniel Reeves that she had no business noticing. He ate lunch alone in the maintenance break room, but he never looked lonely. He read technical manuals while he ate sandwiches from a brown paper bag. Homemade, she realized. He made his own lunch. When was the last time she'd made anything herself? Younger workers gravitated to him with problems. A jammed supply closet lock. A malfunctioning bathroom fan. An elevator that made sounds nobody could diagnose. Daniel listened to each problem with full attention, asked questions that cut to the core issue, and either fixed it himself or taught the person how to fix it themselves. He kept a photo in his wallet. Victoria discovered this by accident. She was passing the break room, purely coincidental, she told herself, when she saw him pull out his wallet to retrieve what looked like a punch card. A photograph slipped out, He caught it before it hit the floor, handled it with the tenderness most people reserved for religious artifacts. She only glimpsed it for a second. A little girl with dark hair and bright eyes grinning at the camera with a gap-toothed smile. Mia. Daniel looked at the photo for a long moment. His whole face changed. The weariness lifted. The professional distance melted away. He looked younger, lighter, almost happy. Then he tucked the photo back into his wallet, finished his lunch, and returned to work. Victoria retreated to her office, sat at her desk, stared at the numbers on her screen without seeing them. She thought about her own father. Richard Chase kept no photos in his wallet. He kept business cards from people who could advance his interests and receipts he might need for tax purposes. She thought about her mother. Sarah had kept photos everywhere, on the refrigerator, on her nightstand, in her purse. Photos of a family that had looked happy in pictures and been slowly dying in reality. She thought about the worn edges of the photograph in Daniel's wallet. How many times had he looked at it? How many moments of exhaustion had been countered by that gap-toothed smile? Her phone buzzed. Marcus. The quarterly report needed her signature. The Department of Defense wanted a follow-up meeting. Senator Morrison's office had called about a campaign contribution. Victoria returned to work. But she kept thinking about the photograph. That Friday, she did something she'd never done before. She worked late. Not unusual. She was always working late. But this time, instead of staying at her desk until midnight, she left at 6. Drove past Daniel's apartment building in Oakland. She didn't know why. Didn't want to examine why. The neighborhood was modest, clean but worn. The kind of place where people worked hard and got by without getting ahead. So different from the penthouse where she slept alone, surrounded by furniture that cost more than most people's annual salaries. She spotted them through the window of a small pizzeria. Daniel and Mia sharing a pepperoni pizza at a corner table. The little girl was gesturing wildly, telling some story that required her entire body to express. Daniel listened with complete attention, nodding at the right moments, laughing when the story apparently reached its punchline. His laugh. Victoria hadn't seen him laugh before. It transformed him. The weight he carried seemed to lift for a moment. He looked young and free, and completely present. Mia said something else. Daniel responded by sticking a pepperoni on his nose. Mia dissolved into giggles so intense she nearly fell off her chair. Victoria sat in her car watching this scene play out through fingerprint-smudged glass. A father and daughter. Pizza and laughter. Something so simple it shouldn't have felt revolutionary, but it did. When was the last time she'd laughed like that? When was the last time anyone had paid attention to her the way Daniel paid attention to Mia? When was the last time she'd mattered to someone not because of what she could do for them, but simply because she existed? She couldn't remember. Her phone buzzed. Her father. She declined the call. Another buzz. Marcus. Some crisis that demanded immediate attention. Victoria put the car in drive and pulled away from the curb. In her rearview mirror, the pizzeria glowed warm against the Oakland night. She drove back to San Francisco, back to her penthouse, back to a life that looked perfect and felt empty. The following Monday, she made a decision that surprised even herself. Meridian was hosting its annual charity gala in 2 weeks, $1,500 a plate, black tie. The kind of event where money pretended to care about causes while actually networking for more money. She had her assistant deliver an invitation to Daniel personally. The invitation came back the next day, a polite decline on a handwritten note. Thank you for the kind invitation. Unfortunately, I have a prior commitment. Friday nights are for Mia. Pizza and a movie. I'm sure you understand. Best regards, Daniel Reeves. Victoria read the note 3 times. Prior commitment. Pizza and a movie. People would kill for invitations to the Meridian Gala. CEOs called in favors. Politicians made donations. Socialites schemed for months. and Daniel Reeves turned it down for pepperoni and whatever animated film was playing at the Dollar Theater. She should have been insulted, should have been offended by his casual rejection of an opportunity most people would fight for. Instead, she felt something else, something dangerously close to admiration. She picked up her phone, dialed before she could talk herself out of it. "Mr. Reeves, this is Victoria Chase." Silence on the other end. Then, "Miss Chase, is there a problem with the cooling system?" "What, gnome?" "No problem. The system is running perfectly." "Then how can I help you?" "How can I help you?" Not what do you want, or why are you calling. Just simple, straightforward willingness to be useful. "I received your note about the gala. I apologize if the decline was inappropriate. I understand it's a significant event." "It's not about the decline. I was wondering about your Friday nights." The words came out before she could stop them. She heard how strange they sounded, a CEO calling a maintenance worker to ask about his weekend plans. "My Friday nights, with Mia, the pizza and movie. Is that something you've always done?" Another pause. When Daniel spoke again, his voice had softened slightly, still cautious but less guarded. "Since she was 3. Lauren, her mother, she left on a Friday. Mia cried all weekend because she didn't understand why Mommy wasn't coming home for movie night." Victoria's throat tightened. "I'm sorry. I told her we'd make Friday nights special, just the two of us. We've missed maybe 3 Fridays in 5 years, and only because she was too sick to leave the house." That's really beautiful." She heard him laugh softly. "It's pizza with a 7-year-old Miss Chase. Nothing beautiful about it. Just consistent. Kids need consistent." "I wouldn't know. My parents weren't particularly consistent about anything except their expectations." The confession slipped out. Unprofessional, inappropriate. The kind of vulnerability that Victoria Chase never showed anyone. Daniel was quiet for a moment. "That sounds lonely." "It was." She paused. "It is." "Miss Chase, why are you calling me honesty? Pure and direct. No polite deflection or corporate doublespeak." "I don't know," she admitted. "I should let you go. I'm sure you have work to do." "I'm on break. Got another 10 minutes. 10 minutes. He was offering her 10 minutes of his break, the same 10 minutes he could spend resting or eating or calling his daughter's school. "What's she like?" Victoria asked. "Mia. She's 8 going on 40, reads everything she can get her hands on, obsessed with robots, talks to plants because she's convinced they're lonely, started a petition at her school to get better vegetarian options in the cafeteria because her friend Sophia doesn't eat meat. Did it work, the petition? Got 70 signatures. They added a veggie burger to the menu last month. Mia cried happy tears for an hour." Victoria found herself smiling. Actually smiling. Not the professional smile she deployed in meetings, but something real. "She sounds wonderful. She's the best thing I ever did. The only thing that mattered in the end. The only thing. I had a career once. Military. Good career. I was on track for commander, maybe captain eventually. Had the respect of my crew, the support of my superiors. It felt important. It felt like it mattered." He paused. Victoria waited. "Then Lauren left, and I realized that none of it mattered if I wasn't there to raise my daughter. So I walked away. 15 years of service, a pension, a purpose I believed in. I gave it all up. Do you ever regret it? Every time Mia falls asleep with her head in my lap during movie night, I know I made the right choice. Every time she shows me something she's proud of. Every time she says, 'I love you, Daddy,' for no reason at all. No regret. Not once." Victoria felt something break inside her chest. Something she'd been holding together for so long, she'd forgotten it was damaged. "My mother killed herself when I was 16, she said. The words came out flat, clinical. The way she'd learned to discuss it in therapy sessions she'd stopped attending years ago. Daniel didn't gasp, didn't offer empty condolences. He just listened. She was unhappy. My father's affairs, his coldness, the way he made her feel small every day of their marriage. She left a note that said, "Love is weakness. I found her in the bathtub." Christ, Victoria. I spent 18 years proving she was right, building walls, cutting people out, making sure no one ever got close enough to hurt me. I'm very good at it. The press calls me the surgeon because I remove things that don't serve my purpose. People, emotions, attachments. That sounds exhausting. She laughed. Not the polished laugh of corporate events, but something raw and uncontrolled. It's empty. I'm successful and I'm lonely and I'm 35 years old, and the closest thing I have to a meaningful relationship is with a maintenance worker who turned down an invitation to my company's gala for pizza with his daughter. You called to tell me that? I called because I saw you laugh last Friday, through the window of a pizzeria in Oakland. You stuck a pepperoni on your nose, and your daughter laughed so hard she nearly fell off her chair. Silence. I was watching you, Victoria continued. I drove to your neighborhood and sat in my car watching you eat pizza because I've never seen anyone look as happy as you looked in that moment. That's pathetic, isn't it? A CEO stalking a janitor because she's forgotten what joy looks like. It's not pathetic, Daniel said quietly. It's honest. What? You're lonely. You're stuck. You saw something real, and it made you want something you don't have. That's not pathetic. That's human. Victoria felt tears building behind her eyes. She blinked them back fiercely. I don't do human. I do successful. I do powerful. I do feared. How's that working out for you? The question hit her like cold water. Terribly, she whispered. It's working out terribly. She heard movement on Daniel's end. The break room microwave beeping. Someone greeting him in the background. I have to get back to work, he said. But Miss Chase Victoria, thank you for calling, for being honest. That took courage. I'm not courageous. I'm desperate. There's a difference. Sometimes those are the same thing. The line went dead. Victoria sat in her office phone still pressed to her ear, listening to silence. Through the window, San Francisco sprawled beneath her. 47 floors of achievement separating her from the ground. She'd never felt more alone. The week that followed was torture. Victoria threw herself into work. Meetings, negotiations. Strategic planning for Meridian's expansion into the European market. She stayed late every night, left early every morning, filled every moment with activity specifically designed to prevent thinking. It didn't work. She kept seeing him. In the hallways, in the lobby. Once briefly in the parking garage, where he was helping a young executive whose car wouldn't start. The executive. Victoria recognized her as someone from the marketing department, looked nervous and grateful and slightly confused about why a maintenance worker would take 20 minutes out of his day to jumpstart her battery. Daniel didn't seem to notice her discomfort. He simply walked her through the process, showed her what to look for next time, and went back to work. Kindness. Simple, uncalculated kindness. When was the last time Victoria had done anything without calculating its strategic value? She couldn't remember. Thursday afternoon, she was leaving a board meeting when she passed his break room. The door was open. She heard his voice. I know, baby. I know you want me to come to the field trip. Pause. But I can't take off work in the middle of the day. I don't have any leave left. I used it all for your school play and the dentist appointment. Longer pause. I'll try. Okay. I'll talk to my supervisor. But Mia, you have to understand. Sometimes grown-ups can't do everything they want to do. The conversation ended with an "I love you too" that carried more weight than Victoria had ever heard in those 3 words. She walked into the break room before she could stop herself. Daniel looked up. His face was tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from physical labor, but the deeper exhaustion of trying to be enough for someone when the universe wouldn't cooperate. "Miss Chase, can I help you? When's the field trip?" He blinked. "What?" "The field trip. The one you can't attend. When is it?" "Tomorrow. The Science Center downtown. Mia's class has been looking forward to it for weeks. She wanted me to be a chaperone, but I already used my personal days this month, and I can't afford. Take it off." "I'm sorry. The day, take it off, paid." Daniel stared at her. "You can't do that. HR doesn't allow. I own the company. I can do whatever I want." She pulled out her phone, typed a quick message. "Done. You're officially excused tomorrow for family obligations. Full pay. If anyone questions it, have them call my office." "Why?" Daniel's voice was cautious, suspicious even. "Why would you do that?" Victoria didn't have a good answer. The real answer: because I haven't stopped thinking about you, because watching you with your daughter made me question everything I've built, because I want to be the kind of person who does things for others without calculating the return. Felt too raw, too vulnerable. "Consider it a thank you," she said, "for the cooling system. You already thanked me for that. Then consider it an investment in employee morale. Studies show that work-life balance improves productivity." Daniel almost smiled. "You're lying." "I never lie. Everyone lies, but most people are better at it than you." Victoria felt heat rise to her cheeks. When was the last time someone had called her out so directly? "Fine. You want the truth? I'm lonely. I'm empty. I saw you with your daughter, and for a moment I remembered what it feels like to actually matter to someone. I can't fix that. I can't buy that. But I can give you a day off so your daughter doesn't have to tell her classmates that her dad couldn't make it again." She turned to leave. "Victoria." The use of her first name stopped her. She looked back. Daniel was standing now. Something in his expression had shifted. Not quite trust, but not suspicion anymore either. "Thank you." 2 words. Simple. Genuine. She nodded and walked away before he could see the tears building in her eyes. The Science Museum field trip changed everything. Victoria didn't intend to go. She had meetings scheduled, negotiations pending, a conference call with overseas investors that couldn't be rescheduled. She canceled all of it. She arrived at the Science Center just as Mia's class was filing through the entrance. 23 third graders in matching yellow t-shirts bouncing with barely contained excitement. Victoria kept her distance, watched from behind a rotating exhibit about planetary orbits. Daniel was there, wearing his only dress shirt. Victoria recognized it from the day he'd fixed the cooling system, and looking slightly out of place among the other parent chaperones in their casual California athleisure. Mia spotted him immediately. "Daddy!" She broke away from her classmates and ran full speed into his legs, wrapping her arms around him with the kind of enthusiasm that only 8-year-olds can manufacture. "Hey, baby girl." Daniel lifted her up, and Mia planted a kiss on his cheek. "Ready to learn some science?" "You came. Ms. Rodriguez said you might not come because of work, but I told her you always come. You always come, Daddy." Daniel glanced around the room, and for just a moment, his eyes found Victoria. She was half hidden behind a model of Saturn, pretending to read an information placard. He knew she was there. She knew he knew. Neither acknowledged it. For 2 hours, Victoria followed at a distance, watching Daniel navigate the Science Center with his daughter. He answered her endless questions with patience. He helped her operate the interactive exhibits without taking over. He took approximately 47 photos of her posing with various scientific displays. At the robotics section, Mia's eyes went wide. "Daddy, look. They have one like Helper." Helper, Victoria would later learn, was the name of Mia's ongoing robot project. A simple creation made from salvaged parts and YouTube tutorials designed to carry things and respond to basic voice commands. Daniel knelt beside his daughter as she examined the museum's robot display. "What do you notice about this one?" he asked. Mia studied the robot with intensity. "It's got better sensors than Helper, and the wheels are different." "What could we learn from that?" "Maybe we could add more sensors, and different wheels would help Helper climb better." "Good thinking. We'll work on it this weekend." "Promise?" "Promise." Victoria felt something crack open in her chest. This was what she'd missed. Not just the love she could identify love when she saw it, but the partnership, the collaboration, the way Daniel treated his 8-year-old daughter like a person whose ideas mattered. Her father had never asked what she noticed. He'd told her what to see, told her what to think, told her who to be. She slipped out of the museum before they noticed her watching. But in the parking lot waiting beside her Tesla was someone she hadn't expected. Her father. Richard Chase leaned against a black Mercedes, arms crossed, wearing a suit that cost more than most of the parents in that museum made in a month. "Interesting choice for a day off," Richard said, following the maintenance man to his daughter's field trip. "That's not obsessive at all." Victoria's blood went cold. "How did you—" "I've had someone watching since the gala incident. You left early, made a phone call to him, gave him a personal day. Now you're here." Richard pushed off from the car, walking toward her with the measured steps of a predator. "This needs to stop." "There's nothing to stop. You were just embarrassing yourself, and by extension, embarrassing me." Richard's voice carried the quiet menace that Victoria had feared since childhood. "That man is beneath you, Olivia, literally and figuratively. He changes light bulbs for a living. He has nothing to offer you except scandal. He fixed a $12 million cooling system that your hand-picked engineers couldn't touch. He got lucky. Even janitors get lucky sometimes. He's not a janitor. He's a former Navy lieutenant commander with, former being the operative word. He gave up, quit, couldn't handle the real world, so he retreated to changing light bulbs and unclogging toilets." Richard stepped closer, his voice dropping to the tone he used when he wanted complete obedience. "I didn't build sterling technologies so my daughter could throw it away on working-class fantasies. Your mother made that mistake. She fell for romantic notions of love and happiness, and look where it got her." Victoria flinched. "Don't." "Don't what?" "Tell the truth. Your mother was weak. She chose emotion over logic and it destroyed her. I won't watch you follow the same path." "Maybe she wouldn't have felt so destroyed if you'd ever loved her." The slap came before Victoria could react. Not hard. Richard Chase would never leave marks, but sharp enough to make the point. "End it," he said, his face inches from hers. "Whatever this is, whatever fantasy you're entertaining, end it now, or I will." He walked back to his Mercedes and drove away. Victoria stood alone in the parking lot, cheek-burning, heart pounding. Through the museum's glass doors, she could see Daniel walking out with Mia on his shoulders, both of them laughing about something. He spotted her car, started to raise his hand in acknowledgement. Then he saw her face. He said something to Mia, set her down with the other kids and their chaperone, and walked quickly toward Victoria. "What happened?" His voice was sharp now, urgent. "Your face? It's nothing." Victoria tried to smile, failed. "My father has opinions about how I spend my time." Daniel's expression hardened in a way she hadn't seen before. "He hit you. He made a point. The Chase method of parenting. That's assault. That's family." Victoria laughed and it came out broken. "Welcome to my world, Mr. Reeves. Not so glamorous up close, is it?" Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then slowly, deliberately, he raised his hand and brushed his thumb across her cheek. The gesture was so gentle, so unexpected that Victoria stopped breathing. "You deserve better," he said quietly. "Better than a father who hits you. Better than a world that made you think you have to be alone. You don't know what I deserve. I know you came to a science museum on a Thursday morning to watch a maintenance worker and his daughter look at robots. I know you gave me a day off because you heard me telling Mia I couldn't make it. I know you're standing in a parking lot with a red mark on your face, and instead of calling lawyers or planning revenge, you're trying not to cry." Victoria felt the tears spill over despite her efforts. "That tells me a lot about what you deserve," Daniel finished. "And it's not this." Behind them, Mia's voice called out, "Daddy, the bus is leaving." Daniel stepped back. The connection broke. He was once again the maintenance worker, and she was once again the CEO, and the distance between them felt like an ocean. "I have to go," he said. Victoria nodded, couldn't speak. He turned and walked back toward his daughter. Mia waved at Victoria with the uncomplicated friendliness of a child who didn't understand social hierarchies. Victoria waved back. Then she got into her car and drove to the only place she could think of, her mother's grave. She hadn't visited in almost a decade. The cemetery was quiet, well-maintained, the kind of place where wealthy people buried their uncomfortable secrets. Sarah Chase's headstone was simple compared to the ornate monuments around it. Just her name dates and a quote Victoria had chosen when she was 16 years old: "Love is only weakness if you choose the wrong person to be strong for." She'd found those words in her mother's journal, the only thing she'd kept after the funeral. "I think I understand now," Victoria said to the stone. "Why you gave up. Why the note said what it said. You chose the wrong person, and you thought that meant love itself was the problem." The wind moved through the trees. No answer came. None was expected. "I've been choosing the wrong things too. Success instead of connection. Power instead of joy. Fear instead of hope." She knelt in the grass, not caring about her designer clothes. "A maintenance worker looked at me today like I was worth something. Not because of my money or my company or my name, just because I was crying in a parking lot and he thought I deserved kindness." Tears fell onto the grave marker. "I don't know what to do with that. I don't know how to be the kind of person who deserves kindness. You didn't teach me that. Dad certainly didn't. I've spent my whole life learning how to hurt people before they can hurt me, and now someone's showing me another way, and I don't know if I'm brave enough to take it." She stayed until sunset. When she finally stood, her legs were stiff, and her face was swollen from crying. But something had shifted. Something was beginning. Victoria started coming to the maintenance break room every day. At first, she made excuses. Facilities review. Quality control inspection. Random oversight that required her personal attention. But by the second week, she stopped pretending. She showed up at noon with 2 cups of coffee. Real coffee, not the burnt sludge from the executive floor machine. Daniel looked at the cup she handed him, then at her, then back at the cup. "Is this poisoned?" "It's a latte. 2 shots. No sugar." "How do you know how I take my coffee?" "I pay attention." He took the cup, sipped, nodded once. "It's good." "I know." They sat across from each other at the scratched metal table, surrounded by lockers and vending machines and the industrial hum of the building's mechanical systems. The other maintenance workers had learned to disappear when Victoria appeared, partly out of intimidation, partly because Daniel had quietly asked them to give him space. "Mia asked about you," Daniel said. Victoria's heart stuttered. "She did. Wanted to know who the pretty lady in the parking lot was, the one who looked sad." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That you're someone I work with. Someone who helped Daddy come to the field trip. That's it. What else would I say?" Victoria traced the edge of her coffee cup. "I don't know. That I'm the crazy CEO who follows you around like a lost puppy. That I'm so emotionally stunted, I don't know how to have a normal conversation without calculating its strategic value." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "You're doing fine right now." "This doesn't feel normal." "What does it feel like?" She considered the question, really considered it, instead of deflecting with corporate polish. "Terrifying," she admitted. "Like standing on the edge of something and not knowing if the fall will kill me or set me free." Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, After Lauren left, I felt like that every day, standing at the edge, not knowing if I'd survive the next hour, the next day, the next week. But Mia needed me to keep standing, so I did. How do you keep standing when everything inside you wants to collapse? You find one thing to hold on to, one thing that matters more than the fear. For me, it was Mia. Every time I wanted to give up, I'd look at her sleeping in her crib, and I'd think she didn't choose this. She didn't ask for a mother who'd leave, or a father who's barely holding it together. The least I can do is show up. I don't have a Mia. You have yourself. Daniel met her eyes. That's enough. It has to be enough until you find something else. These conversations became their ritual. Noon in the break room, coffee and honesty. Victoria learned about Daniel's years in the Navy, the missions he couldn't talk about, the friends he'd lost. Daniel learned about her mother, her father, the penthouse that felt like a prison dressed in designer furniture. "Why do you stay?" Daniel asked one day. "With the company, with your father. You have enough money to walk away 10 times over." Walking away means he wins. Does it? Or does staying mean he already won? The question haunted her for days. 3 weeks into their strange friendship, Mia got sick. Daniel called in to work, left a message with his supervisor, said he needed the day to take care of his daughter. Victoria found out when she arrived at the break room with 2 coffees and found it empty. "Where's Reeves?" she asked one of the other maintenance workers, a young man named Carlos, who looked terrified to be addressed directly by the CEO. "His daughter, ma'am. She's sick," he called out. Victoria should have left it alone, should have returned to her office and her meetings and her carefully constructed life. Instead, she drove to Oakland. She found the address in his personnel file. A 3-story apartment building with peeling paint and a broken buzzer. She climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor, knocked on door 2B. Daniel opened it, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His t-shirt was stained. His hair was uncombed. Behind him, Victoria could hear the wet, miserable cough of a very sick child. "Victoria, what are you—" "I heard Mia was sick. I brought soup." She held up a paper bag from the deli near her penthouse. Homemade chicken soup, the good kind with real vegetables and thick noodles. Daniel stared at her like she'd sprouted wings. "You brought soup. Is that weird?" "That's weird, isn't it? I should go. I'm sorry, I just—" "Come in." He stepped aside. Victoria entered an apartment that was tiny by her standards, but immaculate. Mia's drawings covered the refrigerator. A half-built robot sat on the kitchen table beside a stack of library books. The furniture was old, but carefully maintained, each piece clearly chosen for function over form. It felt like a home in a way her penthouse never had. Mia was on the couch, wrapped in blankets, watching cartoons with glassy eyes. When she saw Victoria, she managed a weak smile. "Daddy? It's the sad lady." Victoria knelt beside the couch. "Hey, sweetheart, I heard you weren't feeling well." "My chest hurts when I cough." Mia's voice was rough, barely above a whisper. "And my head is hot." Victoria touched her forehead. The fever was high, too high. "Have you seen a doctor?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "The clinic can get us in tomorrow morning. I tried the urgent care, but they want the copay up front, and I don't get paid until Friday." Victoria felt something cold settle in her stomach. "How much is the copay?" $50. $50. The cost of a single appetizer at the restaurants she frequented. The cost of nothing. "I can—" "No." Daniel's voice was firm. "I appreciate the offer, but I don't take charity, especially not from my employer. It's not charity. It's you feeling sorry for the poor maintenance man who can't afford basic health care for his kid." His words weren't angry exactly, more tired, more resigned. "I've been down that road, Victoria. When Lauren first left, people wanted to help. Churches, charities, well-meaning neighbors. They all looked at me the same way you're looking at me right now. Like I was broken. Like I needed fixing." That's not... I'm not broken. I'm broke. There's a difference. Broken means something inside doesn't work anymore. Broke just means the math doesn't add up this month. I'll figure it out. I always do. Victoria stood. Her hands were shaking. You're right, she said. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come. She turned toward the door. Wait. Daniel's voice stopped her. She turned back. He was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not anger anymore. Something softer. The soup was a nice thought. Thank you. You're welcome. And Victoria? He paused, seeming to wrestle with something. I don't need your money, but Mia could use the company. She's been asking about you since the field trip. Maybe you could stay. Just for a little while. Victoria looked at the little girl on the couch, at the fever-bright eyes watching her with uncomplicated hope. I'd like that, she said. She stayed for 3 hours. She read to Mia from her library books stories about robots and space exploration, and brave little girls who saved the day. She helped Daniel make the soup, learning that he'd never actually used a stove more complicated than a hot plate until Mia was old enough to want real meals. She listened to Mia's raspy explanations of her robot project, nodding at the appropriate moments, even when she understood maybe half of what the 8-year-old was describing. When Mia finally fell asleep exhausted from coughing and fever, Victoria and Daniel sat at the kitchen table speaking in whispers. She's amazing, Victoria said. You've done an incredible job with her. She's amazing despite me, not because of me. Half the time I have no idea what I'm doing. Join the club. I run a billion-dollar company and I still don't know what I'm doing most days. Daniel laughed softly. Different stakes. Are they? You're raising a human being. I'm just moving money around. Money that saves lives. The AI diagnostic system your company launched that's going to help real people. Doctors in rural areas who can't afford specialists. Patients who get diagnosed months earlier than they would have otherwise. That matters. I never think about it that way. I think about market share, quarterly projections, competitive advantage. Maybe that's the problem. Victoria looked at him, really looked past the fatigue and the stubble and the second-hand clothes. You see the best in everything, don't you? Even me. I see what's actually there. Most people miss it because they're too busy looking at the surface. What do you see when you look at me? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful, as if he was choosing each word precisely. I see someone who's scared, who's been taught that love is a trap and connection is a weakness. I see someone who built walls so high she forgot there was anything on the other side. But I also see someone who brought soup to a maintenance worker's apartment because his daughter was sick. Someone who canceled meetings to watch a field trip from behind a rotating model of Saturn. Someone who's trying to learn a different way of being, even though it terrifies her. Victoria felt tears building. She blinked them back. What if I can't learn? What if I'm too broken? I told you before. There's a difference between broken and broke. You're not broken, Victoria. You're just out of practice at being human. It comes back. Eventually. She reached across the table, took his hand. His fingers were rough, calloused, so different from the smooth hands of the executives she'd dated. I think I'm falling in love with you, she said. And I don't know what to do with that. Daniel didn't pull away, but something in his expression shifted. Victoria, I know. I know it's impossible. I know we come from different worlds. I know my father would burn everything to the ground before he let this happen. I know all the reasons it can't work. Then you know why I can't let this go any further. Because of the reasons, or because you don't feel the same? He closed his eyes. When he opened them, she saw the answer. Feeling something and acting on it are different things. I have a daughter to think about, a job I need, a life that's finally stable after years of chaos. You're the CEO of the company where I change light bulbs. Even if the feelings were there, the reality is impossible. What if I changed the reality? You can't change who your father is. You can't change the world we live in. And I won't let Mia get attached to someone who might disappear when the complications get too hard. Victoria pulled her hand back. The rejection stung, even though she understood it. I should go. Victoria. No, you're right. I was being selfish. I was thinking about what I want without considering what it would cost you and Mia. That's exactly what my father would do, and I hate that I'm capable of it. She stood, gathered her purse, walked to the door. Thank you for letting me stay, she said. For the hours with Mia. That meant more to me than you know. You're welcome here, Daniel said. Anytime, as a friend. Friend. The word felt like a door closing. Goodbye, Daniel. She walked out before he could see her cry. That night, Richard Chase was waiting in her penthouse. He'd let himself in again. Of course he had. He owned the building, the doorman probably half the city council. There was nowhere Victoria could go that he couldn't find her. Oakland? He said, not looking up from the whiskey he was pouring. Again. You spent 3 hours in that maintenance worker's apartment. With his daughter. You're having me followed. I'm protecting my investment. You are the face of Sterling Technologies. You are my legacy. And you're squandering it on a man who makes $40,000 a year and lives in a building without a working elevator. His name is Daniel. I don't care what his name is. I care that this ends. Now. Victoria felt something shift inside her. Something that had been building since she'd sat beside her mother's grave. Since she'd watched Daniel laugh with his daughter. Since she'd held Mia's hand while reading stories about brave girls who saved the day. No. Richard looked up. His eyes narrowed. What did you say? I said no. I won't end it. Whatever this is between Daniel and me, it's mine. The first thing in my life that doesn't belong to you, that you didn't arrange or approve or control. I won't give that up because you're afraid of what it means. Afraid? Richard laughed. I'm not afraid, sweetheart. I'm disgusted. You're throwing away everything I built for you on a fantasy. A maintenance worker. A single father from Oakland. The media will have a field day. The board will lose confidence. Everything we've worked for. Everything you've worked for. Not me, you. I've been living your dream for 35 years, Father. Your expectations, your ambitions, your version of success. And I'm empty. I'm miserable. I'm so lonely I followed a stranger to a pizza parlor just to remember what human connection looks like. Richard's expression hardened. Your mother said similar things before she killed herself because living with you was worse than dying. Yes. I know. I found her body. Remember, I read her note. I spent 18 years trying not to become her, but maybe I should have spent those years trying to understand her instead. She was weak. She was in pain, and you put her there. Victoria stepped closer to her father, feeling a courage she'd never accessed before. But I'm not her. I'm not going to let you destroy me the way you destroyed her. I'm going to live my life, love who I choose, be who I want to be. And if you can't accept that you can take your company and your money and your legacy and get out of my house. Richard stared at her for a long moment. Victoria braced for the slap the way she had in the museum parking lot. It didn't come. Instead, something worse appeared in his eyes. Calculation. Very well, he said softly. You've made your choice. Now let me make mine. He set down his whiskey glass and walked past her toward the door. What does that mean? Richard paused at the threshold. It means that by this time tomorrow, Daniel Reeves will be unemployed. His apartment building will be purchased by a development company I control, and all tenants will be evicted for renovation. His daughter's school will lose the corporate sponsorship that keeps their robotics program running, and if he tries to fight any of it, I'll make sure he never works in this city, any city again. Victoria's blood went cold. You can't do that. I will. Unless you come to your senses and remember where you belong. He opened the door. You have until noon tomorrow. Say goodbye to your maintenance man, or watch me destroy everything he loves. The door closed behind him. Victoria stood alone in her penthouse surrounded by art and furniture and evidence of wealth, and felt the walls closing in. She didn't sleep that night. At 7 a.m. she drove to Oakland. She drove. Parked outside Daniel's building. Watched his lights come on. Watched him leave for work. Mia's hand in his as they walked to the bus stop. She should warn him, should tell him what was coming, should give him time to prepare. But prepare for what Richard Chase had resources that Daniel couldn't match, couldn't even comprehend. Whatever battle Daniel might try to fight, he would lose, and his daughter would suffer the consequences. Unless Victoria stopped it. Unless she gave Richard what he wanted. At 11:45 a.m., Victoria walked into Meridian Technologies for the company Christmas party. The lobby was decorated with expensive taste and artificial cheer. Executives in designer clothes sipped champagne and pretended to enjoy each other's company. Richard was there watching her from across the room. Waiting. Harrison Wells, the senator's son, was there too. He'd apparently forgiven her for the knee to the groin. Probably because his father had reminded him how useful a connection to Sterling Technologies would be for his political ambitions. Victoria, Harrison approached with champagne and practiced smile. You look stunning. I was hoping we might start over. I behaved poorly at our last encounter. Yes, Victoria said. You did. Let me make it up to you. Dinner tomorrow. That new French place on the waterfront. Victoria looked past him to where Daniel stood by the service entrance. He was there as part of the maintenance crew, invisible to everyone except her. Their eyes met. In his gaze, she saw everything she wanted. Understanding. Acceptance. The possibility of a life that mattered for reasons beyond money and power. In Harrison's gaze, she saw everything she was supposed to want. Ambition. Status. The kind of acceptable match that would make her father proud. Richard was watching, waiting for her answer. Yes, Victoria said, hating herself even as the word left her mouth. Dinner tomorrow. I'd like that. Harrison grinned. Richard nodded once satisfied. Across the room, Daniel turned and walked away. Victoria watched him go, feeling something die inside her chest. She'd made her choice. She'd chosen safety over risk, power over love, her father's world over Daniel's. She'd become exactly what she'd sworn she'd never be. But at least Mia would still have a home. At least Daniel would still have a job. At least the destruction would be contained. That was something. That had to be enough. 3 hours later, everything fell apart. Harrison, emboldened by champagne and what he interpreted as Victoria's renewed interest, cornered her on the balcony overlooking the bay. I've been thinking about us, he said, standing too close, his breath sour with alcohol. About what we could be together. My political future, your company. We'd be unstoppable. Harrison, I should get back to... Don't play hard to get. He grabbed her arm, pulling her closer. I know what you want. Women like you always want the same thing. Power, status. Someone who can match your ambition. Let go of me. Just one kiss. That's all I'm asking. Then we can talk about the rest. He leaned in. Victoria tried to pull away. His grip tightened. And then he wasn't holding her anymore. Daniel appeared from nowhere, grabbing Harrison's arm and twisting it behind his back with military precision. The senator's son yelped in pain and surprise. The lady said, let go. Who the hell are you? Do you know who my father is? Don't care. Daniel pushed him away. Touch her again, and I'll break something that won't heal. Harrison stumbled, catching himself on the balcony railing. His face twisted with rage and humiliation. You're dead. You hear me? You're finished in this city. I'll have you arrested, fired, destroyed. Go inside, Harrison. Victoria's voice was ice. Before I add my own complaint to whatever he does to you. Harrison looked between them, calculating. Then he straightened his jacket and stormed back into the party, already pulling out his phone. Victoria turned to Daniel. "You shouldn't have done that. He'll go straight to my father. Richard will—" "I know what Richard will do. I got the message this morning." Victoria's heart stopped. "What message?" "Anonymous email. Very detailed. Everything that would happen to me and Mia if I didn't stay away from you." The eviction notice arrived an hour later. "Daniel, I'm so sorry. I tried to stop it. I said yes to Harrison because I thought—" "I know why you said yes." Daniel's voice was calm, but something burned beneath the surface. "You thought you were protecting me, protecting Mia, making the sacrifice so we wouldn't have to suffer. Wasn't I? You were making the same mistake your mother made, trying to solve an impossible problem by giving up on yourself. What else was I supposed to do? Richard has everything. Money, power, connections. He'll destroy you, Daniel. He'll take everything." "Maybe. Probably." Daniel stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "But there's one thing he can't take. One thing no amount of money or power can touch." "What?" "Me choosing you anyway." Victoria felt the tears come. "You can't. Your job, your apartment, Mia's school are just things, replaceable things. I've rebuilt from nothing before. I can do it again." "But why? Why would you risk everything for someone you barely know?" Daniel reached up and touched her face, gently the way he'd touched her in the museum parking lot. "Because you're not a broken thing that needs fixing, Victoria. You're a person who deserves to be loved. And I think I've been falling in love with you since you handed me that first cup of coffee and pretended it wasn't completely weird." Victoria laughed through her tears. "It was completely weird." "I know. I loved it anyway." Behind them, the balcony door opened. Richard Chase stepped out, followed by Harrison and 2 security guards. "There," Harrison pointed. "That's the man who assaulted me." Richard surveyed the scene. His eyes moved from Daniel's hands on Victoria's face, to the tears on her cheeks, to the way she leaned into his touch instead of pulling away. "Well," Richard said softly, "it seems you've made your choice after all." "I have." Victoria stepped forward, putting herself between her father and Daniel. "And it's him. It's always been him. Since the moment he looked at me like I was worth something more than my last name. You're throwing away everything. The company, the fortune, your future. I'm claiming a future you never wanted me to have. One where I get to be happy." Richard's face hardened. "Then you're no longer my daughter. You're no longer CEO. You're nothing." "I'm exactly what Mom would have wanted me to be." Victoria's voice didn't waver. "Someone brave enough to choose love over fear." Richard flinched, the first crack in his armor she'd ever seen. Then he turned to the security guards. "Remove this man from the building, permanently, and notify HR that Victoria Chase no longer has authority over any Meridian operations." The guards moved toward Daniel. "Wait." Victoria grabbed Daniel's arm. "If you take him, you take me. Don't be dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic. I'm being clear. Wherever he goes, I go. Whatever happens to him, happens to me. You want to destroy him? You'll have to destroy us both." Richard stared at her. Behind him, the party continued, oblivious to the family imploding on the balcony. "You'll regret this," he said finally. "When the money runs out, when the romance fades, when you realize what you gave up for a man who changes light bulbs for a living. Maybe. But at least I'll know I was brave enough to try." Richard nodded once. Something that might have been respect flickered in his eyes, quickly buried. "Guards, stand down. Let them leave." The security guard stepped back. Richard turned and walked into the party without looking back. Victoria sagged against Daniel, the adrenaline draining. "What just happened?" "I think you just chose me over everything else." "I did. God help me, I did." She looked up at him. "What do we do now?" Daniel took her hand, squeezed it. "Now we go tell Mia she's getting a mother for Christmas." They drove to Oakland in silence. Victoria's hands trembled on the steering wheel. The adrenaline from the confrontation was fading, leaving behind a hollow feeling that might have been fear or freedom or both. Daniel sat in the passenger seat watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "You're shaking," he said. "I just told my father I'm no longer his daughter. I gave up $1 billion company. I walked away from everything I've ever known." Victoria laughed, but it came out broken. "I think I'm allowed to shake a little." "Pull over." "What?" "Pull over. Let me drive." She found a gas station, killed the engine, sat there staring at the steering wheel. "What did I just do?" Daniel reached over and took her hand. "You chose yourself, for maybe the first time in your life." "I chose you." "Same thing. You chose the version of yourself that gets to be happy, that gets to love someone without calculating the strategic value." He squeezed her fingers. "That's not nothing, Victoria. That's everything." "But Mia, your job, the eviction, Richard will still—" "Let me worry about Richard. Right now I need to go home and tell my daughter that our lives are about to change. You want to come with me, or you want to sit in this parking lot and panic?" Victoria looked at him. This maintenance man who'd fixed her cooling system, who'd shown her what courage looked like, who'd chosen her back when choosing her meant losing everything. "I want to come with you." "Then move over. I'm driving." They switched seats. Daniel pulled back onto the road, navigating toward Oakland with the ease of someone who'd made this drive 1,000 times. "She's going to have questions," he said. "Mia, a lot of questions." "I know. She's going to ask if you're her new mom." Victoria's breath caught. "What do I say? What do you want to say?" "I want to say yes, but I've known her for a few weeks. I've known you for barely longer. Is it crazy to want this much this fast? I've seen people fall in love slower and still get it wrong. I've seen people rush in and build something beautiful. There's no right timeline, Victoria. There's just honesty. Are you honest about wanting this?" "Yes." "Then that's enough for now." Mia was watching cartoons when they walked in. Her fever had broken the day before. The color was back in her cheeks. She looked up at the sound of the door, and her face lit up when she saw Victoria. "The sad lady, Daddy, you brought the sad lady?" "Hey, sweetheart." Daniel knelt beside the couch. "How are you feeling?" "Better. My chest doesn't hurt anymore." Mia looked at Victoria with curious eyes. "Are you still sad?" Victoria knelt down too. "I was sad for a long time, but I think I'm getting better." "Like me, because I was sick and now I'm better." "Exactly like that." Mia nodded, satisfied with the explanation. Then she looked between Victoria and her father with the kind of perception that only children possess. "Are you going to be my mommy?" Daniel and Victoria exchanged glances. They'd expected questions, but not quite this directly. "Would that be okay with you?" Victoria asked carefully. "My friend Sophie has 2 mommies, and Marcus has a stepdad, and Emma's dad lives in another state, but she sees him on holidays." Mia tilted her head. "I just have Daddy. But Daddy gets tired sometimes. If you were my mommy, maybe he wouldn't be so tired." Victoria felt tears building. "I'd like to try, if you'll let me." "Can you make pancakes?" I've never made pancakes." "That's okay. Daddy's not good at pancakes either. His always burn on the bottom." Mia smiled. "Maybe we can learn together." "I'd like that." Mia reached out and touched Victoria's face. Her small fingers traced the path where tears were falling. "You're crying, but you're smiling too. Daddy does that sometimes. He says it means his heart is too full for just one feeling." Victoria pulled the little girl into a hug, held her tight, felt something crack open in her chest that had been sealed shut since she was 16 years old. "Your daddy is very smart," she whispered. "I know. He's the best daddy in the whole world." Daniel watched them, his own eyes bright. When Victoria looked up at him, he smiled. The same smile she'd seen through the pizzeria window. The one that made him look young and free and happy. "So what happens now?" Mia asked, pulling back from the hug. "Do you live with us because our apartment is really small, and helper takes up a lot of space on the table?" "Actually," Daniel said, "that's something we need to talk about. Some things are going to change, baby girl." "What kind of things?" "We might have to move, find a new apartment." "Why?" Daniel hesitated. Victoria stepped in. "There's a man who's very angry at me, because I chose to be with your daddy instead of doing what he wanted, and he's going to try to make things hard for us. That's mean. It is mean. But here's the thing about mean people, Mia. They only win if we let them scare us into giving up. And your daddy taught me something important. When things break, we don't give up. We fix them." Mia considered this with 8-year-old gravity. "So we're going to fix it. We're going to try. Together." Victoria looked at Daniel. He nodded. "Together," Victoria said. The next 2 weeks were chaos. Richard moved fast. The eviction notice was followed by a court filing. Daniel's final paycheck was delayed due to administrative processing. The school called to inform them that the corporate sponsorship for the robotics program had been withdrawn effective immediately. Victoria fought back with every tool she had. She called lawyers, old classmates from Harvard who owed her favors, journalists who'd been waiting for a chance to investigate Richard Chase's business practices. She liquidated the personal accounts her father couldn't touch, sold jewelry she'd never worn, converted assets into cash faster than Richard's legal team could freeze them. "You don't have to do this," Daniel said one night. They were sitting at his kitchen table surrounded by legal documents and takeout containers. Mia was asleep in the next room. "This is your money, your security. You shouldn't burn through it fighting my battles." "Our battles. And it's not about the money. It's about not letting him win." "What if he wins anyway? He has more resources, more connections, more time." "Then at least I'll know I tried. At least I'll know I fought for something that mattered." Daniel reached across the table, took her hand. "I've never had anyone fight for me before. Not like this. I've never had anything worth fighting for. Not like this." He lifted her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles. "Whatever happens, I want you to know something. These past few weeks, watching you transform, watching you find your courage, it's been the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I couldn't have done it without you. You could have. You just needed someone to remind you that you were allowed." Victoria leaned forward, kissed him. Not the desperate, uncertain kiss of their first time. Something deeper now, something that felt like home. "I love you," she said. "I don't think I've ever said that to anyone and meant it. I love you too. All of you. Even the parts you're still learning to love yourself." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Victoria's phone rang at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. "Hello. Miss Chase. This is Gerald Morrison. Senator Morrison." Victoria sat up in bed. Daniel stirred beside her. "Senator, it's the middle of the night." "I'm aware. I apologize for the hour, but what I have to say couldn't wait, and I wanted to make sure no one was listening." "I'm listening." "Your father made a significant mistake last month. He threatened my son's career if Harrison didn't pursue you romantically. Tried to force a connection that would benefit his business interests." "I'm not surprised." "Neither was I. But Harrison, despite his many faults, has a conscience buried somewhere. He told me what happened at the Christmas party, how the maintenance worker defended you, how you chose him over everything your father offered." "Is there a point to this call, Senator?" "The point is this. I've spent 20 years watching Richard Chase destroy anyone who opposed him. Business rivals, political enemies, his own family. I've stayed quiet because it was safer, because he had leverage. And now I'm tired of being afraid. And I think you might be too." Victoria's heart began to pound. "What are you proposing?" "I have documents, financial records, evidence of practices that would interest several federal agencies. I've been holding on to them for years, waiting for the right moment. Or maybe just waiting for someone brave enough to use them. Why me? Because you walked away from a billion-dollar inheritance to be with a man who fixes things for a living. That tells me you're not for sale. And that makes you dangerous to your father in a way no one else has ever been. Send me the documents. They'll be at your door by morning. But Victoria, there's something you should know. What? Using these will destroy your father, completely. There's no coming back from what's in these files. You need to be certain that's what you want. Victoria thought about her mother, about the bathtub, about the note that said love is weakness. She thought about Richard, about the slap in the parking lot, about the years of control and manipulation and calculated cruelty. She thought about Mia, about pancakes they'd learned to make together, about Friday pizza nights she wanted to be part of forever. Send them, she said. The documents arrived at 6 a.m. Victoria spent the next 12 hours reading. Daniel brought her coffee, made her eat, watched over Mia when Victoria was too deep in legal documents to surface. What she found was worse than she'd imagined. Fraud, bribery, environmental violations that had killed people, settlements that had been buried to protect the company image, payments to politicians, payments to journalists, a systematic pattern of destroying anyone who threatened Richard Chase's power, including, buried in a financial spreadsheet from 18 years ago, a payment to the doctor who had prescribed her mother's medication. Victoria stared at that line item for a long time. $50,000 2 weeks before her mother's death. Paid to Dr. Marcus Webb, the psychiatrist who had been treating Sarah Chase for depression. Paid through a shell company that traced back to Richard. "Oh my God," she whispered. "What?" Daniel came up behind her, looked at the screen. "What am I seeing?" "My father paid my mother's doctor, right before she died." "Paid him for what?" "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." She made calls, pulled records, tracked down Dr. Webb, who had retired to Florida and was now living in a modest beachfront condo. "Miss Chase, I've been expecting this call for 18 years. You knew my mother. I treated her, or tried to. Your father had specific ideas about what her treatment should look like." "What kind of ideas?" Long pause. Victoria could hear waves in the background, the cry of seagulls. "He wanted me to keep her sedated, manageable. He said she was becoming erratic, threatening to leave him, threatening to take you and disappear." Victoria's blood ran cold. "And I refused, told him that wasn't appropriate treatment, that Sarah needed support, not suppression. A week later, he sent someone to my office, made it very clear what would happen to my career if I didn't cooperate." "Did you cooperate?" "I changed her prescription, increased the dosage, told myself it was for her own good, that the alternative would be worse." His voice cracked. 2 weeks later, she was dead, and I've spent every day since wondering if I killed her." Victoria couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "Miss Chase, are you still there?" "He murdered her." Victoria said, her voice hollow. "My father murdered my mother. I can't say that for certain. The overdose could have been accidental, could have been intentional. But I can tell you this, Richard Chase created the conditions that made her death inevitable, and he paid me $50,000 to help him do it. Will you testify to that? I'm dying, Miss Chase. Pancreatic cancer. 6 months, maybe less. I've got nothing left to lose and a soul I'd like to clean before I meet my maker." He paused. "Send me whatever you need. I'll sign it." Victoria hung up the phone, sat very still. Daniel was beside her in an instant. "Victoria, what happened? Talk to me." "He killed her. My father. He didn't just drive her to suicide. He created it, designed it, paid for it. Jesus Christ. All these years I thought she was weak, thought she gave up. But she didn't give up. She was pushed by the man I spent my whole life trying to please." The tears came then, not the quiet tears of the cemetery, or the tender tears of Mia's hug. These were violent, racking sobs that tore through her chest and left her gasping. Daniel held her, Didn't try to fix it. Didn't offer empty comfort. Just held her while she broke apart. "I'm going to destroy him," Victoria said when she could finally speak. "Not just for me. For her. For every person he's ever crushed. I'm going to burn his entire empire to the ground." "Are you sure?" "He killed my mother, Daniel. He made me believe she was weak, that love was poison, that I had to be cold to survive. He shaped my entire life around a lie. So yes, I'm sure." Daniel nodded. "Then I'm with you. Whatever you need. However long it takes." Victoria looked at him through swollen eyes. "Why? Why would you sign up for this? This isn't your fight. You're my fight. Mia's my fight. Building a life where we're all safe and happy, that's my fight. And I don't abandon fights I believe in, even when they're impossible. Especially when they're impossible. That's when fighting matters most." She kissed him, tasted salt and coffee and something that felt like hope. "I don't deserve you." "Yeah, you do. You just forgot for a while." The next morning, Victoria called a press conference. She stood before cameras and microphones, wearing a simple dress that cost less than her old earrings, and told the world the truth about Richard Chase. She named the fraud, the bribes, the environmental disasters, the cover-ups. She named her mother, Sarah Chase, victim of a husband who couldn't stand to let her be free. She named herself, Victoria Chase, survivor of a father who taught her that love was weakness because he was terrified of anyone who knew how to love. And then she did something her father never expected. She apologized. "I was part of this system," she said, looking directly into the cameras. "I benefited from my father's crimes. I turned a blind eye because it was easier than asking questions. I hurt people because I was too broken to know any other way." She paused, took a breath. "But I'm not broken anymore. I'm rebuilding. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make up for the damage I caused." Reporters shouted questions. Victoria answered some, deflected others. When asked about her personal life, she smiled. "I'm in love with a good man who fixes things for a living. He taught me that when something's broken, you don't throw it away. You repair it. That's what I'm trying to do. Repair what I broke. Rebuild what my father destroyed." "Miss Chase, is it true you gave up $1 billion inheritance for this man?" Victoria looked off stage where Daniel stood with Mia in his arms. The little girl waved. Victoria waved back. "I gave up $1 billion and gained a family. Seems like a pretty good trade to me." The story exploded. Every network ran coverage. Every newspaper printed headlines. Richard Chase's carefully constructed empire began to crumble as stockholders fled and board members resigned and federal investigators started making calls. 3 days after the press conference, Victoria's phone rang. Her father. "You've destroyed everything," Richard said. His voice was quiet, controlled, but underneath she could hear something she'd never heard before. Fear. "No," Victoria said. "You destroyed everything. I just showed people the wreckage. They're going to arrest me. The lawyers say it's inevitable. Fraud, racketeering, possibly manslaughter for what happened to your mother." "Good. I'm your father. You stopped being my father 18 years ago, when you killed my mother and let me believe she was weak." Long silence. "I did what I thought was necessary. She was going to leave. Take you with her. I couldn't allow that. So you drugged her into oblivion and acted surprised when she couldn't survive. I loved her." "You controlled her. That's not the same thing." Victoria's voice hardened. "And you tried to do the same to me. But here's the difference between me and Mom. I found someone who taught me what love actually looks like, and it looks nothing like you. That maintenance worker, you threw away everything for him. I threw away nothing. I walked away from a life that was killing me, just like Mom tried to do. Except I had something she didn't. I had someone who believed I was worth saving." Victoria. "Goodbye, Father." I hope prison gives you time to think about what you've done. But honestly, I hope you never have a moment's peace for the rest of your life. That's what you took from Mom. That's what you almost took from me." She hung up, turned off her phone, walked into the kitchen where Daniel was teaching Mia how to make pancakes. "Everything okay?" Daniel asked. "Yeah." Victoria wrapped her arms around him from behind, rested her head against his back. "Everything is finally okay." Mia held up a pancake that was only slightly burned on one side. "Look, I did it myself." "That's beautiful, sweetheart." "Can we eat them now? I'm hungry." "Absolutely. But first, there's something I need to ask your daddy." Victoria pulled back, turned Daniel to face her. "What is it?" "Marry me." Daniel's eyebrows shot up. "What?" "Marry me. I know it's fast. I know we haven't known each other long. I know we're in the middle of chaos and uncertainty and a federal investigation. But I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I want to be Mia's mom. I want to be your wife. I want to build something real with you, something that matters. So marry me. Please." Daniel stared at her. Then he started to laugh. "What? Why are you laughing?" He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box. "I was going to ask you tonight. Bought this 3 days ago. Been carrying it around trying to find the right moment." Victoria's hands flew to her mouth. "You were going to—" "I was going to propose with the worst pancakes in history as a romantic backdrop, but you beat me to it." "Is that a yes?" Daniel opened the box. Inside was a simple ring, small diamond. Nothing like the jewelry Victoria used to wear. It was perfect. "That's a yes," he said. "That's always been a yes. From the moment you handed me that first cup of coffee and pretended it wasn't completely insane." Victoria laughed through tears as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Mia looked between them, confused. "What's happening?" "Victoria asked me to marry her," Daniel explained. "And Daddy said yes." "Daddy said yes." Mia's face split into the biggest smile Victoria had ever seen. "Does that mean you're really going to be my mommy?" Victoria knelt down, took Mia's hands. "If you'll have me. Forever. Forever." Mia threw her arms around Victoria's neck. "I always wanted a mommy," she whispered. "I used to ask God for one every night. And now you're here." Victoria held her tight. Over Mia's shoulder she met Daniel's eyes. He was crying too. "Welcome to the family," he said softly. Victoria smiled through her tears. "Best family I've ever had." The wedding was small. 23 people gathered in the backyard of a rented house in Marine County. No designer gowns, no celebrity guests, no press coverage, just family. Daniel's Navy buddies stood in a loose formation by the fence, looking uncomfortable in their civilian suits, but grinning like they'd just won a war. A few colleagues from Meridian who'd reached out after the press conference. The owner of the pizza shop in Oakland, who'd fed Daniel and Mia every Friday for 5 years. And Mia. She walked down the aisle first, scattering flower petals with the intensity of someone defusing a bomb. Her dress was purple because, as she'd explained with 8-year-old logic, white was boring and purple was the color of royalty, and she was going to be a princess today, whether anyone liked it or not. Victoria watched her from the makeshift altar, tears already building. "You okay?" Daniel whispered beside her. "I'm watching our daughter throw flowers at your Navy friends. I've never been more okay in my life." Mia reached the altar and took her position beside Victoria, reached up and grabbed her hand. "You look pretty," Mia whispered. "So do you, princess." "I know. Daddy said I look like a movie star." "Your daddy's right." The ceremony was simple. Vows they'd written themselves, promises that meant something because they'd been forged in fire. "I promise to fix every broken thing in our lives," Daniel said, "including the parts of myself I'm still working on." "I promise to never be too proud to ask for help," Victoria said. and to make pancakes even when they burn. Which they will, a lot. Mia giggled. The Navy buddies laughed. Someone in the back wiped their eyes. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant said. "You may kiss the bride." Daniel pulled Victoria close, kissed her with the same gentle intensity he brought to everything he did. Mia tugged at both their sleeves. "Can I be part of the kiss too?" They lifted her between them. Group hug. Group kiss. The photograph that would hang in their living room for decades. Afterward, at the reception, Victoria found herself standing alone by the punch bowl, watching. Daniel was teaching one of his Navy buddies how to do the robot dance. Mia was explaining her latest invention to anyone who would listen. The pizza shop owner was telling embarrassing stories about Daniel's early days as a single father. "You look happy." Victoria turned. A woman she didn't recognize stood beside her. Mid-60s, gray hair, kind eyes. "I'm sorry, do we know each other?" "Not exactly. But I knew your mother." Victoria's breath caught. "I'm Margaret Thornton, Sarah's cousin. We lost touch after what happened. Your father made sure of that." "Why are you here?" "Daniel found me, tracked me down through military contacts. He thought you might want to meet someone from your mother's side of the family." Victoria looked across the yard at her husband. He caught her eye, nodded once. "He did that. He said you deserved to know where you came from. The real version, not the one your father told you." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know anything about her family. My father never talked about them." "That's because we never approved of him. We tried to warn Sarah, tried to get her to leave, but she thought she could change him, thought love would be enough." Margaret reached into her purse, pulled out a faded photograph. "This was taken when Sarah was 17, before she met your father, before everything went wrong." Victoria took the photo with trembling hands. Her mother, young and beautiful, laughing at something off camera, eyes bright with joy. No trace of the broken woman Victoria remembered. "She was happy once," Victoria whispered. "She was happy a lot. Before him. And sometimes when she talked about you, she was happy again. You were the only light in her life, Victoria. She used to call me late at night after Richard was asleep. Tell me about your first steps, your first words, how smart you were, how much she loved you." "I didn't know. He made sure you didn't. He wanted you to think she was weak, that her love was the problem. But Victoria, your mother wasn't weak. She was trapped. And she loved you more than you'll ever know." Victoria broke down. Margaret held her while she cried. This stranger who was family. This connection to a past she'd been denied. When the tears finally stopped, Victoria looked at the photograph again. "Can I keep this?" "It's yours, along with a box of letters Sarah wrote to me over the years. They're in my car. I thought you might want them." Letters. She wrote about everything. Her hopes, her fears, her dreams for you. The woman your father wanted you to forget. She's all there waiting for you to meet her. That night after the reception, after Mia had fallen asleep, still wearing her purple princess dress, Victoria sat in bed reading her mother's letters. Daniel lay beside her, not reading, just present, available if she needed him. The letters spanned 15 years. From Sarah's early marriage, full of hope that Richard would soften, to the final years dark with despair, but always focused on Victoria. "My darling girl turned 5 today." One letter read, "She asked me why Daddy never smiles. I didn't know what to tell her. How do you explain to a child that some people forget how to feel joy? I hope she never forgets. I hope she stays full of light no matter what happens to me." Another letter from 2 years before Sarah's death. "Victoria is becoming so strong. I see myself in her, but I also see something else. A steel core that I never had. Maybe that's Richard's gift to her, the one good thing he accidentally gave. The strength to survive. I hope she uses it better than I've used mine." The final letter was dated 1 week before Sarah died. I can't do this anymore. The medicine makes everything foggy. Richard says it's for my own good, but I know the truth. He's erasing me, piece by piece. Soon there won't be anything left. But Victoria, my beautiful girl, she'll be okay. She has to be. She's stronger than I ever was. And someday when she's ready, I hope she finds this letter. I hope she knows that her mother loved her. Loved her more than life itself. More than anything Richard could take away. Victoria. If you're reading this, please know I didn't leave because I was weak. I left because staying would have meant losing myself completely. And if I lost myself, I'd have nothing left to give you. I hope you understand. I hope you forgive me. I hope you find someone who loves you the way you deserve to be loved. Someone who fixes things instead of breaking them. Someone who makes you feel safe. Be happy, my darling. Be brave. Be you. That's all I ever wanted. Love, Mom. Victoria read the letter 3 times. Then she put it down and sobbed into Daniel's chest. She knew, Victoria whispered. She knew what he was doing. She knew he was drugging her. And she still loved me. Right until the end. She never stopped loving you, Daniel said. She just couldn't find a way out. I found a way out. Because of you. You found a way out because you were ready. I just showed up at the right time with a broken cooling system. Victoria laughed through her tears. You showed up with a lot more than that. Yeah, well, I'm a full-service maintenance man. She kissed him, tasting salt and coffee and home. I love you. I love you too. Now get some sleep. Mia's going to wake us up at dawn demanding pancakes. Promise. Promise. Victoria closed her eyes. For the first time in 18 years, she slept without nightmares. 5 years passed. They didn't pass easily. Nothing worth having ever comes easily. But they passed with a fullness that Victoria had never imagined possible. Richard Chase died in federal prison 2 years after his conviction. Heart attack, alone in his cell. No one came to the funeral except lawyers settling the estate. Victoria inherited nothing. She'd signed away her rights the day she testified against him. But Margaret Thornton left her something far more valuable when she passed a year later, a farmhouse in Sonoma. The house where Sarah had grown up. The house where Victoria's mother had learned to be happy before Richard Chase stole that happiness away. They moved there after the trial. Daniel converted the barn into a workshop. Victoria started a non-profit focused on helping survivors of domestic abuse rebuild their lives. Mia attended the local school and won the science fair 3 years running. Helper the robot. Mia had started building at 8, evolved into a fully functional prototype by the time she was 12. A simple machine that could navigate obstacles, respond to voice commands, and deliver items to people with mobility challenges. Helper helps people, Mia explained to anyone who asked. That's what robots should do, help not hurt. She'd presented it at a regional competition, won first place, attracted the attention of investors who saw commercial potential. But Mia refused to sell. Helper's not for making money, she told the venture capitalist who offered her $50,000 for the patent rights. Helper's for helping. If I sell it, some company will just make it expensive and only rich people will have it. That's not what Helper is for. Victoria had never been prouder. She's just like you, she told Daniel that night. She's better than me. She figured out what matters without having to learn it the hard way. You taught her. We taught her, together. On Mia's 13th birthday, they threw a party at the farmhouse, her school friends. Daniel's Navy buddies, some of whom had become honorary uncles over the years. Neighbors from the valley who'd welcomed them as family. Victoria made the cake herself. 3 layers, chocolate, only slightly lopsided. It's perfect, Mia declared. It's crooked. Perfect things are boring. I like crooked. After the party, after the guests had left, and Mia was showing her friends her latest robot modifications, Daniel and Victoria sat on the porch watching the sunset. She's going to change the world, Victoria said. She already has. Changed ours anyway. I mean, really change it. She's got your stubbornness and my resources and a heart bigger than both of us combined. She's going to do things we can't even imagine." Daniel reached over, took her hand. 5 years ago, I was living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Oakland, wondering how I was going to afford Mia's school supplies. Now I'm watching the sunset with my wife, while our daughter builds robots that help people. Life's weird. Life's beautiful, when you find the right person to share it with. Victoria leaned her head on his shoulder. "I was thinking about my mom today, about the letters, about what she wrote at the end. The part about finding someone who fixes things instead of breaking them. Yeah, she was describing you. She never met you, but she was describing you." Daniel kissed the top of her head. Maybe she knew, somehow, that you'd find your way to someone who could help you heal. I don't believe in that kind of thing. You didn't believe in love either. Look how that turned out. Victoria smiled. Fair point. Mia burst through the screen door. "Mom, Dad, come see what Helper can do. Now I programmed it to sing Happy Birthday. Does it sing well? It sings terribly, but it tries really hard, and that's what matters." Victoria and Daniel exchanged glances. "She really is the best of both of us," Victoria said. "She's the best of everything." They followed their daughter inside. Watched Helper the robot attempt to sing Happy Birthday in a voice that sounded like a garbage disposal fighting a synthesizer. Mia beamed with pride. "Isn't it amazing?" "It's the most amazing thing I've ever heard," Daniel said with a completely straight face. Victoria laughed so hard she cried. Later that night, after Mia was finally asleep, Victoria went to her office, opened the box of her mother's letters, read the final one again as she did every year on Mia's birthday. "Be happy, my darling. Be brave. Be you." "I'm trying, Mom," Victoria whispered. "Every day. I'm trying." She put the letter away, walked to Mia's room, watched her daughter sleep for a moment. Then she went to her own bedroom, where Daniel was reading a technical manual about some new invention he wanted to build. "What are you looking at?" she asked, climbing into bed beside him. "Solar panels for the barn. Thought I'd make us completely off-grid." "That sounds expensive." "That sounds like a challenge." Victoria smiled. "You and your challenges." "You married me for my challenges." "I married you for your terrible coffee and your ability to fix Swedish cooling systems." "Same thing." She curled against him. He set down the manual, wrapped his arm around her. "Happy?" he asked. "Yeah, you. Happiest I've ever been. Even happier than when you fixed that generator in 90 minutes. That was pretty good, but this is better. This is better than saving a $2 billion product launch. This is better than everything." Victoria closed her eyes. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the childhood of expectations and emptiness, the mother she'd lost, and the father who'd destroyed her. The years of building walls so high she'd forgotten there was anything on the other side. And then Daniel, a maintenance man with calloused hands and a heart big enough to hold her broken pieces. Mia, a daughter who'd taught her that love wasn't weakness, but the only strength that mattered. This house, this life, this family she'd never dared to imagine. "Hey," Daniel said. "Yeah. Remember the day we met when I told you I didn't need your kiss?" Victoria opened her eyes. "I remember. I was lying. You were not. I was. I looked at you standing there all ice and armor, and I thought that woman needs someone to see past the walls. And then I thought maybe I'd like to be that someone. You never told me that. I'm telling you now." "Why now?" "Because I was thinking about Mia, about her birthday, about how we almost didn't have this, how one different choice, one moment of fear, and we'd have missed everything." "But we didn't miss it." "No, we didn't." Daniel pulled her closer. "You know what I think." "What?" I think your mother was right. In that last letter. About finding someone who fixes things instead of breaking them. She was right about a lot of things. But mostly she was right about you. About the strength you had inside you all along. She saw it even when you couldn't. And she hoped you'd find someone who could help you see it too. Victoria felt tears building. Happy tears this time. The kind that came from a heart too full for just one feeling. I found you, she whispered. We found each other. And that's the whole point, isn't it? Not fixing each other. Just finding each other. Being there while the other person figures out how to fix themselves. When did you get so wise? Mia taught me. Somewhere between the robot building and the terrible pancakes, she figured out everything the adults spend their whole lives missing. Victoria laughed softly. What did she figure out? That love isn't weakness. It's the only thing that makes us strong enough to fix what's broken. In ourselves, in each other, in the world. Daniel kissed her forehead. Good night, Mrs. Reeves. Good night, Mr. Reeves. Victoria closed her eyes. Outside, the stars were bright over Sonoma. Inside the farmhouse, her daughter slept surrounded by robots and dreams. Beside her, her husband breathed the slow, steady rhythm of a man at peace. She'd spent 35 years believing her mother's final words. That love was weakness. That trust was trap. That the only way to survive was to never let anyone close enough to hurt you. She'd been wrong. Love wasn't weakness. Her father was weakness. Fear was weakness. Walls were weakness. Love was the only thing that had ever made her strong enough to tear those walls down. She thought about the morning she'd first seen Daniel in that boardroom. The maintenance man who'd known more than the engineers. Who'd fixed the impossible and walked away without looking back. Who'd chosen pizza with his daughter over champagne with billionaires. She thought about what she'd said to him that day. The arrogant challenge. The mocking promise of a kiss. She thought about what he'd said back. About his daughter. About fixing broken things because they deserved to be fixed. He'd been talking about the generator. But maybe in some way, he'd also been talking about her. Victoria smiled in the darkness. She was fixed now. Not perfect. Never perfect. But whole in ways she'd never thought possible. Held together by love and stubbornness and the simple radical act of letting someone in. Her mother had been right. Love was only weakness if you chose the wrong person to be strong for. Victoria had chosen right, and for the first time in her life, she knew exactly who she was. Not the ice queen, not the surgeon, not Richard Chase's daughter. She was Victoria Reeves, wife, mother, survivor, and she was finally completely, irrevocably home.